We're returning to the topic of video game addiction for today's industry insight. Now, our previous video on the topic, we discussed the World Health Organization's ruling on game addiction and what it means for video games that target people via monetization, microtransactions, gotcha elements, and so on and so forth. At the end of that piece, I talked about the idea behind what it means when we refer to very engaging or great video games. XCOM, Civilization, Binding of Isaac, World of Warcraft, so on and so forth. And when do we, or where do we draw that line when it comes to a game being engaging and addictive or harmfully addictive to the consumer? Now, since that talk, or since that video, I had a chance to sit down with Ramin Shogazad again, which that video will be linked down below and it's probably annotated somewhere here right now. And we discussed further about video game addiction. And in that piece, we came to a point about where that line is and why it's okay to be addicted to a video game like World of Warcraft, Binding of Isaac, and many, many more examples, versus a game actively targeting you for it. And that's what I want to discuss today. When we talk about games that are highly engaging and are still very addictive, they have a few unique elements to them that separate them from games like Clash of Clans, Ebony, and pick any other very exploitive mobile or free-to-play game. The first point is that it respects the player's time. What that means is that the game itself is allowing the player to play it as much or as long or as short as they want, without any penalties therein. So one thing that we see for a lot of monetized games is having things like timers, pay or wait, or forcing the player to sign on to do something, or have tournaments that you must be on at exactly this time, or you're not going to be able to do anything. This also refers to games that explicitly are built around very long and unavoidable periods of play. Meaning that if you want to make any progress, you better have an hour to 2 hours of your time each time you play, or you might as well not bother. Now that also takes us to another point regarding quick saving and quick loading as very effective ways of being quality of life and helping people who don't have a lot of free time. Now, the exception to this point is when we talk about competitive-based games. Street Fighter, CSGO, League of Legends, Dota, Fortnite, you name it. In these games, when you go to play them at the competitive level, you are essentially chunking a part of your time to play this game. Again, anyone who's played League of Legends knows that you're not going to play an entire League of Legends match in 5 to 10 minutes. If you can't balance or measure out an hour of your time at minimum, then you can't really play those games. And unfortunately, unless you have like some kind of quick play or super fast mode, you're not really going to be able to enjoy those games, especially if you have kids or a job to do. But games that are really great in this regard, again, allow people to play at their own pace, as well as not punish them for doing so. This is when we talk about elements like pay to win, wherein if I give someone $100, they can make as much or even more progress than someone who's just playing the game casually. And again, it's all about respecting how much or how little time someone has to put into your game. Again, this isn't about saying that someone who only plays your game for 5 minutes a day is going to make as much progress as someone who plays 4 to 5 hours. But that the experience is scaled so that as long as you keep playing the game, no matter how little or how much time you spend, you're still going to see that progression curve grow over a period of time. Now, for point number 2, and that is games that are scaled towards the player instead of against them, we have some game footage, and I'm pretty sure everyone watching this knows what this game is going to be. So here we have Warframe, a game that has certainly grown and has become a fan favorite over the years. Now, this game is entirely built on a free-to-play structure, and you'll see in about 20 seconds the game's main form of microtransactions and monetization, and that is the market. This game has a store that's pretty much, I think, akin to like Walmart in terms of everything that it sells. Do you want new weapons? Do you want new items? Do you want skins? Do you want different lights, pets, resources? You name it, Warframe will sell it in this store. But despite having such a extensive microtransaction model, the game is viewed favorably among gamers thanks to the second point, and that is the game is skewed or favors the player as opposed to the monetization. What that means when it comes to game addiction is that the player themselves is going to have the experience be tailored towards them playing the game as opposed to getting money out of them. One of the things that we see in a lot of free-to-play and heavily monetized games is that the experience is skewed against them, aka the house wins. Anyone who's studied gambling knows that slot machines are inherently designed in terms of their payout percentages for the house. It doesn't make sense to put a slot machine in that someone's going to win every time they put money. So many monetized games will typically skew these elements to make it more about paying the game as opposed to playing them. This can be everything from tilting or raising the cost of items to make them more alluring to spend real money. Everybody's favorite, spend $19.99 right now and you'll get a $200 value, but you better do it in the next 30 minutes or it's gone. And these elements, and even stuff like loot boxes, with their percentage chances hidden, or gotcha elements as well. With Warframe, everything is spelled out as plain as day as it can be for a game like this. The store can still be a little bit confusing, but everything about Warframe respects the player and is tilted towards their experience. I can spend money in Warframe, and I know that you watching this right now, there's probably a good chance if you're a fan of Warframe, you've probably given them money. But you of course know that everything that is related to gameplay in Warframe, from progression to unlocking new masteries and new rewards, is skewed towards the player and playing the game. I can do as much as I can Warframe with all the quote-unquote free items, the ones I need to craft, or I can spend regular currency to acquire, as you can see here. But those additional items are certainly going to add to the experience, but the game is not scaled or balanced towards them. This isn't a game where I can give someone $1,000, tell them to spend it, and they're going to hit max rank, max everything in 10 minutes of play. Conversely, when we talk about free-to-play games that are skewed towards the monetization, that's not the case, and this is where that pay-to-win argument comes back in. If I can just spend $500 and do as much or even more than someone who's spent like the last 3 months playing the game day to day, then that is a serious problem. Now, when it comes to the good side of addiction like this, again, while you can have those elements like microtransactions and monetizations, the game itself is not punishing you for not playing the game. And I can play, and another great thing about Warframe is the fact that because it's built on a mission by mission structure, you can play it for as little as you want. You can spend 10 minutes a day doing a mission there, a mission here and there, or you can sit for 2 to 3 hours and go through an entire planet. Again, the game is not rewarding or punishing me for spending as much or as little time as I want. And many games that do try to trigger those psychological impulses will have those elements, such as, oh, if you leave now, you're going to lose your bonus, or you must log in at this exact time to complete this quest, and if you don't log in by then, you're going to lose stuff. And again, all these elements, and again, not in Warframe, but in many monetized games, are explicitly designed to trigger those impulses to keep people playing. And like I said at the start, there's a big difference between a game that is engaging to play, that you want to keep playing, versus a game that is actively encouraging or forcing you to keep playing. And that's when we cross that line to very harmful behavior. And why it's okay to play 100 hours of Civilization if you want to play it, versus being forced or being held hostage by your account or your items to keep playing a game. Now, with that said, there is one final point that we talked about last time, but it needs to be said here, as well as in the written piece on Game Wisdom. And that is, video games, by their very design, are addictive. And there will always be people who can succumb to that addictive nature. Again, people who are going to become addicted to a game like Civilization, like World of Warcraft, like Warframe, those psychological triggers are basically more about the person rather than the game. And as we talked about, someone who becomes addicted at that level could have easily have fallen prey to any other activity. People who, go mountain hiking every weekend for the adrenaline rush, driving cars, reading books, watching TV all day long. These are behaviors that can give pleasure. And when you are manipulating or triggering the pleasure center of a person's brain, that can create those harmful levels of addiction. But again, this is a very small subsection compared to the overall community. I'm sure, just as with World of Warcraft and just as with Warframe, that there are people who may have gone too far playing this game. That is just the nature of the beast. But as long as your game is not actively targeting those psychological triggers, then it's more about educating people about addiction rather than limiting or hurting games. And as a very interesting point, Digital Extremes a few months ago actually removed a microtransaction option because of the fact that they were seeing people using it too much or becoming addictive to that element. And if anyone here, I know people watching this around who are more into Warframe than I am right now, if you can mention that example down below, I would really appreciate it. But with that said, we're going to wrap things up for today's industry insight. And like we've said, this is a topic that we may be coming back to in the future. I am sure we'll be talking to Ramin very soon in another discussion about it. But at the end of the day, video games are engaging and they are addictive. Again, raise your hand if you spend more than 500 hours playing a game that you love. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you are in control over how much or how little you're playing that game. Again, I can spend hundreds of hours playing Binding of Isaac, but I'm not being tethered to that game or being forced to do it because of how the design works. I'm playing it because it's a great video game. Much like someone who enjoys watching great movies will go to see them every week, or again, do a sports activity, or read a book, and so on and so forth. The danger comes when the person loses control. And if a game is being explicitly tilted and scaled to trigger those elements, that is not helpful to the game industry, and that is when we start getting into some anti-consumer policies. But with that said, thank you so much for watching today's Industry Insight. If you'd like to pitch a topic for a future piece, let me know in the comments below. Check back for daily discussions on game design here, and on Game Wisdom, where we study the art and science of games. Until next time, have a good night. Before we get to the credits, just a quick shout out to the supporters over on patreon.com/GWBycer. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to check back for our regular streaming most nights at 9:30, 10 EST, and you'll find a schedule linked down below. For a collection of my writings as well as audio casts on design, you'll find that at game-wisdom.com. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at GWBycer. If you're interested in hanging out and talking about game design topics, we have a Discord channel with the basic tier open to everybody, and that is linked down below as well. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, it is at patreon.com/GWBycer. Your support can help to keep things going and growing, and you can earn rewards such as ad-free versions of our talks, votings for our specific Let's Plays and grabback streams, and more. But that's it for now. Thanks again for watching. I hope you come back for more great discussions on design here and on GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games.